There's a motion at the desk. The clerk will report the motion.
Pursuant to Rule 4.30, Greenman moved that House File Number 3433 be recalled from the Committee on Public Safety, Finance, and Policy, be given its second reading, and placed on the General Register.
I recognize the member from Hennepin. Representative Greenman, to your motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. That is my motion, and I request a roll call.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker. This bill bans semi-automatic military-style assault weapons and would put us with 12 other states and that represent a third of our population of this country, who live in a state that ban these weapons of war. We have been talking a lot, and I will not read the letters and bring up all the statistics that you have heard. You have heard those here tonight. What I will say is, do not look away. We do not have to become numb to this. These weapons, 116 rounds in 2 minutes, that are murdering our children and making everybody less safe. This bill bans the sale and possession of these enumerated semi-automatic military-style assault weapons, and that include features that will increase their lethality and concealability. These weapons were designed by Eugene Stoner. They were designed for war, for the military, to effectively kill as many people as possible, as quickly as possible on the battlefield. And these assault weapons are doing what they were designed to do, killing and injuring people with ruthless efficiency, but not on the battlefield, in our schools, our grocery stores, our concerts, our workplaces, and on August 27th in the sanctuary of a church. We heard in committee from first responders and ER docs who talked in detail about what these guns and these bullets do in the body and why, and that was what they were designed to do. They were not designed to be in our communities and on our streets. So I want to read you why these weapons matter. And this isn't my testimony. It's Mike Moisky's testimony, and you heard about his daughter, Harper. I want to say something clearly that sometimes gets lost in these conversations. And as an aside, it seems like it's getting lost here. The weapons matter. We hear this phrase overly used. It's not the guns, it's the person. But when someone is intent on killing, chooses a weapon that is specifically designed, rapid fire, and causes catastrophic damage, the weapon absolutely matters. If the person is intent, the weapon determines the scale of the outcome. Different weapons produce different outcomes. The weapon used at Annunciation allowed a single person to turn a church into a mass casualty scene in minutes. Doctors, first responders, survivors have all told you the same thing. These high-velocity rifles tear through and destroy human bodies in ways most firearms simply do not. They were designed to maximize casualty. That design changes what happens inside a building or a body when violence begins. That is exactly what happened the morning of August 27th. We have met with researchers who specialize in school shootings and have learned that our shooters' primary objective was to inflict as much harm as possible on children. And secondly, we learned that the shooters spent a tremendous amount of time researching on this, and guess what specific gun they researched and bought to inflict harm on our children? That's right, the AR-15, and the ammunition that behaves like a missile. What happened at Annunciation shows exactly why the weapons matter. Those are Mike Moisky's words. And again, we don't need to be here all night rehashing the conversations, but I do want to remind you what we are doing here. 69% of Minnesotans want to ban assault weapons, more in the suburbs. 69%, that are people in all of our communities, and responding to those families, the survivors, and the people in our community is not political theater. It is doing our jobs. And so with this bill, we can work on it. We heard it in public safety. We heard a clone of it in judiciary. I am happy and have reached out to work on it, but we didn't see any amendments. What we heard was a whole lot of things that were not about the guns that killed Harper and Fletcher and are injuring folks in mass shootings. So members, we have a choice. We talked about that choice. We have a choice to do what's right. We have a choice to not be numb, but to take action. Or we can continue to tell families that we are sorry, but there's nothing we can do. But what we know is other countries do not have this problem. They have mental health issues. They have all sorts of other issues. And they don't have a school hardening approach. The one difference is they do not have weapons of war on their streets. We cannot look away, members. The day that the Annunciation tragedy, the principal said, when you pray, move your feet. And that's why you are hearing, that's why you have met with so many Annunciation families, that's why you're hearing for communities, from alumni, because they are praying and they are moving their feet. And this is an opportunity to move our feet with them. And I'd ask you to join us.
I recognize a member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So there has been a Supreme Court ruling on the technology argument, and it was Catano versus Massachusetts. It was released March 21st of 2016, and it argued against the finding of a lower court saying that the technology was not covered under the framers of the Constitution. And the Supreme Court, in a decision per curiam, said that that was wrong, and they upheld what was found in Heller versus DC. And what they said was that the argument that you just heard, saying that something that has a higher cycle rate or some other technological advancement was covered under the Second Amendment, particularly under Heller. And I think it's particularly important to note some of the justices that voted in that. So here's the list of the justices: Roberts, Kennedy, Clarence Thomas, Breyer, Alito, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. All three of those justices said that the technology argument was not valid. They voted to uphold the Heller finding. They voted to uphold the fact that whether you're talking about an AR or a Winchester model 1893, it was protected under the Second Amendment. It's just that simple. And I found it particularly remarkable that those three justices decided in a per curiam finding not even to bother writing a dissenting opinion, not even bothering to put up a fight. They said it's not a valid argument, and we're going to overturn the lower court finding. Again, the technology piece, I'm struggling with it, Representative Greenman, and I see you looking this up. I can send you the link for the finding if you want. Catano versus Massachusetts, 2016, March 21st. And again, the justices Bader Ginsburg, Sotomayor, and Kagan voted to overturn the technology argument that's been made. It all comes down again to the person who's using this. So I just think that was a remarkable thing. And I've heard a number of you mention this before. I heard Leader Stevenson at the beginning of session talk about this on a radio interview, I think. guess this part of law was not taught in law school that day, but it is a very valid finding that is important to talk about and important to recognize that the Supreme Court ruled very, very clearly that this was indeed an argument that was not going to hold up. So, members, I urge a no vote on this. It's very clear the Supreme Court has paved the way for you in this. They have laid it all out. So I would encourage you to look through that. Vote red.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Green.
Thank you so much, Speaker. During the interim, I met with a mom who had reached out to me. Her kids go to school in my district, but she lives just outside of it. And in that conversation, I had promised her that I would share a letter from her daughter on the floor if we ever talk about guns and what happened at Annunciation. And I reached out to her today, and I asked her, once again, I wanted to make sure I had permission to share this letter. And this is what she said, the mom. She said, "She deserves meaningful change. Thank you for listening to her and standing up for her and all of the kids at Annunciation." Madam Speaker, can you help with the sound and the...
Members, please take your conversations to the alcoves. Representative Green.
Thank you, Speaker. And I think one of the things that's the most important thing in all this conversation is that none of this has anything to do with us. It has 100% to do with all the Minnesotans outside of this dome. Here's the letter that she wrote. "Dear government, my name is Sophia. I am 10 years old. I go to Annunciation Catholic School. And during church, we went through a shooting. My buddy and me didn't think it was real until we saw my friend get shot. All I saw was black and blood behind me. Thank you. Me hiding under the pews, we got to the gym. And I think that guns should not be sold to anyone. For reasons Harper and Fletcher died. Please do something to make it right. Love, Sophia." Thank you, members.
Recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Falconer.
Thank you, Speaker. Yeah, I wish that we weren't here talking about this, but we are. For me, Annunciation happened this summer. Obviously, we all know that. And I think it just brought to light, it just brought it home. We see mass shootings across the country, and we're always just like, horrible, but at least, it wasn't here. This time it was. And the overwhelming likelihood is that it will be here again unless we do something. These mass shootings at schools, there's a lot of, we should harden our schools, we should have bulletproof vests, whatever. Mass shootings don't just happen in schools. How is hardening a school going to stop the next movie theater assault, the next concert assault, the next nightclub assault? We can't harden, we can't bulletproof window, we can't turn every single building into essentially a jail. The one thing that we can do, and it has been shown over time that does work, the Clinton era assault weapons ban, for example, dramatic drop in deaths. As soon as it was lifted, dramatic increase in deaths. It does work. As has been mentioned, 12 other states have these laws. It's not as if we're striking out on our own and doing something crazy that nobody else across the country has thought of. Other states are taking action, and it's Minnesota's time. For me, the thing that just keeps coming back to me and how this, I'll go to the school example. It's one of the reasons why we're all so passionate about this right now. When school started, it's our oldest kid's senior year, and we're excited for them. Senior, and it's just in the morning, I'm making pancakes, we're getting ready, and they're just looking kind of down. I'm just like, thinking in the back of my head, maybe they're just anxious, who knows what's going on. and thinking, oh, I'll just go into dad joke mode and just try to lighten the mood. So I'm just like, oh, are you worried about not being able to have your cell phone in class anymore? Because our school has a new thing of can't have your phones in class. And, it's just me being kind of a jerk, but just trying to be funny about it and just trying to just have a moment. And the tears welled up. They came in for a hug much longer than normal. And after a bit of time, what they said was, no, I'm just worried I won't be able to say goodbye if somebody comes into our school. Just let that sit with you. My kid says, I am worried because we don't have our phones anymore, that I won't be able to say goodbye. Annunciation had just happened less than a week before the first day of school. We were all still reeling. Minnesota was reeling. We were in shock and pain. And as has been mentioned, it is every parent's worst nightmare. And I think that we all hug our kids, send them on the bus, and we worry, is this the last time? It's in my head almost every day. I know it's in most people's here too. And this is after a summer, of course, after Melissa and Mark were assassinated, and we entered into a new world as a family of my kids suddenly being worried for their personal safety. We had police stationed outside of our house. They did regular patrols around the neighborhood. I'm lucky our police department, the Eden Prairie Police Department, responded as well as they did. I'm very thankful for that. It felt good, but it was also just a constant reminder of the danger we're in from gun violence. Now we have more security cameras up. When I do public events, we don't say the location until the morning of the event. We have to consider security. My kids have to be like, oh, Daddy's going to do a community event. Should we be worried? And this is one of the things that we could choose to do, is to stop weapons of war. This is what they're designed for. They're not defense-style weapons, they're assault-style weapons. They're meant to kill as many human beings as quickly as possible, and it's just not necessary from a defense point of view. I grew up hunting. I'm a gun owner. I don't know if it surprises anybody, but this side of the aisle does have quite a few gun owners. I don't know, no purpose in bringing an assault weapon out hunting deer. I would rather have the deer to eat than have it blown apart. These aren't hunting weapons, they are human killing weapons. Just back to the first day of school, my kids should have been thinking about getting to see their friends again. Getting, everything that it's your senior year. It's like you've worked all this time. It's the last year, your last season with your sports teams. You're thinking about homecoming. You're thinking about prom. All this excitement. But that was taken away this year and replaced with fear. And you know what? You know what I never had to do when I was in school, my K through 12? Lockdown drills. Didn't have to. Wasn't a thing. And again, going back to what I already said, during the Clinton years, and that's when I was the majority of my K through 8, assault weapon ban was in place. Guns are the #1 killer of kids in this country. And will this stop all mass shootings? Of course not. We know that, but it could stop some. I also don't buy the argument that, well, someone will just go to Wisconsin. Well, sure, maybe, some will, but not everybody. And the person that doesn't, those are lives saved. I'm from suburban Eden Prairie in Minnetonka, and like has been mentioned, but I think it is worth saying again, because these are numbers that are real. This is what Minnesota thinks. In the aftermath of Annunciation, 79% of suburbanites like the town that I live in, want assault weapons banned. On top of 69% of Minnesotans that also want that. You know, we're sent here to work for our constituents, and I'm here answering the call of the people that sent me to represent them, to do something, to do something. It's not going to be the perfect thing, it's not going to stop everything, but it will stop some. And we can remove these. It is a choice. We make a choice every day. Your choice is a red button or a green button. And in this human institution, we can make a choice to save human lives. My community's asked me to do this. 79% of suburbanites are. I'm hoping that some of our colleagues in the suburbs will also answer the call from your constituents as well. They sent you here to speak for them. Your vote is you speaking for them. And this is just something we need to do. Let's join the other 12 states. Let's join the state-by-state movement, slowly making our country safer, making our communities safer, making our schools safer, letting parents say goodbye to their kids with a little bit more of assurance that they're going to come home safely. This is something we can do. I hope you'll vote for us. I hope you'll vote for our kids. And we can choose to keep these weapons of war off the streets. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. I never thought I would stand up and talk on an AR ban, gun bill, but I think this is an opportunity to, I guess, kind of reflect. And we're split in this legislature, and it's super frustrating to be able to try to do anything. Very few of us are getting bills passed out of committees, and I'm not sure that, having, these motions of urgency are actually helping us build those relationships to try to do anything or not. But I'm standing up on this particular issue because I think it's important. Because I think it's an example of where we are right now, and I hope in the next few weeks we can change it. And it's like the only answer to the families at Annunciation and other families that experience gun violence is for us to capitulate to a position that you have, or you to capitulate to a position that we have. And there's more than that. It limits our ability, if we disagree on magazine restrictions or AR bans, that doesn't mean that we should stop trying to find the areas where we can find agreement. Representative Bierman has a bill that establishes an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. I think there's movement there. I had an ARS bill that basically, expands on a statewide anonymous reporting system bill that allows schools to enter in, collect that data, provide those wraparound services. Representative Myers has a social media mandatory bill that basically requires social media platforms to report behaviors to the Fusion Center at the BCA. I think, members, those are areas where we can find agreement and actually do what people want, and that's something. If we can't do this, what can we do? Where can we find agreement? And we're evenly split. And I recognize that some people have mentioned that, their cities want a ban on guns. Well, I'll tell you what, there's a lot of cities that don't. And I promise you 100% of your residents don't want a ban. Not 100%. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to find those areas, and it's going to be hard enough for us to find some agreement on an Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Is it housed in the Department of Health? Is it housed in the Department of Public Safety? Does the BCA have a role to play? But you know what? Those are moving forward, where what we're doing today is just entrenching where we are. And I promise you, there's a lot of us here that would like to do more. But we can't. Because we've drawn these lines, and we keep making them wider. And that's where we have to stop. That's where we have to say, and I will be the first one to admit that, you know what, when I draft a bill, I think I'm right. I think every word is perfect. I think it's going to solve the problem, and it's going to make everyone's life better. And I have to step back and say, you know what, I might not be right. As much as it bothers me, I might not be perfect. And I think that's where we have to try to get to today and moving forward. And so we can ignore the fact that, Representative Nash, points out some unconstitutionality of this. We can ignore the fact that Representative Greenman, just wants to ban every gun on the face of the earth. But let's find ways where we can find common ground. And we can hold those strong opinions, and they're great. If we all agreed on the same thing, honestly, half of us wouldn't need to be here. That's what makes this institution awesome, is that we disagree. But if we can't work together to find a path forward, we're not going to get a lot done. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members. So I never have a problem talking about the fact that I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a community called Inglewood. What I don't talk about oftentimes are the detailed stories that impacted me growing up in that community. I grew up on 73rd and Carpenter. I experienced multiple drive-by shootings during my time growing up. I don't know how many people in this body have the experiences that I've had of losing a schoolmate and showing up to school the next day and that person not sitting there anymore. Of attending funerals, seeing the mom scream and cry because that kid is never coming home again. Seeing the siblings know that their brother, sister's never coming home again and not going to play with them again. I don't know how many people have experienced that. But it takes me more than 2 hands to count how many people I lost growing up in my city. And we've mentioned the assault rifle ban multiple times. I grew up before that ban was in place, and then after that ban was in place. Before that ban was in place, there were many drive-by shootings where there were multiple casualties because they were using those assault rifles. After that ban was in place, that number went down drastically. So it's not just an anecdote for me, it is a lived experience that I know this. And I've heard many times in this debate alone, folks talk about political theater, how the governor didn't call a special session to make some people take a tough vote. But here we are right now having this conversation. And everybody in here with an election certificate can take a vote right now. If they truly, really want to do something about these tragedies, they can take a vote right now. And the arguments about how this isn't going to prevent any of these killings from happening, well, I don't know how any of that, I don't know how anyone could articulate that with any type of honesty and good faith. Because we know that if you can't get off over 100 rounds in a minute, it is very probable that many people are going to survive if you don't have that kind of capacity and if you don't have a weapon that can be used in that manner. I remember speaking at one of the rallies after the Enunciation shootings. And I noted that there was also another shooting less than 24 hours before that in South Minneapolis near another high school. But again, I'm no stranger to gun violence. And when I was at that rally and I spoke and I said, look, I just don't know how many lives we have to lose before we all decide and by the we all decide, I meant all of us. I wasn't just speaking about Democrats or Republicans, because I think when it comes to protecting our young people, political affiliation should go out the door. None of that should matter. The only thought should be, if you really believe and truly believe in protecting our young people and protecting communities, the first thought should be, what do I need to do? What can I do to prevent another tragedy like this from happening? And for us, our tool is passing laws, making policy, appropriating resources. I don't mind having a conversation talking about addressing mental health, but then I'll say also, other countries have mental health issues. They don't have the gun problem that we have. I don't mind talking about hardening schools if you want to talk about that. That's not what other countries have done when they've had mass casualty shootings. They've actually taken action to get at the actual tool that is used to do the harm. We can do that. We can do that. Every time we have these debates and we stalemate, we're singling to that mom, to that dad, to that sibling that's never gonna see their loved one again, that we're making the decision not to prevent the next tragedy. Every single time we fail to take an action as a body, we're saying we're gonna let it happen again. That's the power that we have. That is the power that we have. And I implore you, you earned that election certificate. Your constituents sent you here to do a job. When we take that oath, part of that oath is making sure that we secure safety, protect the safeties of our communities. That is one of the main jobs that we are sent here to do. And that is the power that we have as legislators. Sadly, I don't believe I'm going to convince many people or anyone that has already made up their mind that they're not going to vote to support taking away a tool that can cause so much harm in such a short period of time. A tool that has taken so many souls away in a short period of time. A tool for some that may be fun to shoot, but is designed for a specific task to create the most havoc in the shortest period of time. I think our task is simple. I don't think it's complicated at all. We're not asking to take away every single firearm that someone can purchase today. We're asking to address certain tools that are causing the most harm and the most havoc and tend to be the tool of choice for those that want to cause mass tragedies. That is the tool that we are trying to regulate. And it has been regulated before, and that was constitutional, for those constitutional scholars in this room. We can regulate it here. We can save lives. We can show the Annunciation parents that keep showing up every single day, that keep emailing us, that keep sending us letters, leaving us voicemails. We can say to those family members and to every family member that's ever lost a loved one to these type of weapons that we understand the pain and we don't want anyone else to have to go through that. That is an incredible, incredible piece of power that we have. And we should exercise it when we have the opportunity to do that. So I don't know about all of you, but when I decided to run for office, I decided to run because I believed it would give me the opportunity to do the most good to help the most people, particularly those that are not always heard And that's the power that our election certificate gives us. And we need to exercise that power. So I think I know how the vote's going to go, but I wanted to share that. I wanted to remind us all of the power that we have, that we can use to protect those that are most vulnerable. And right now I'm talking about our young people. Our young people, we send them off every single day. Maybe they get on the school bus, we say goodbye, they say they love us. We say, see you later, have a great day. And in this day and age, we just have to hope and pray that they make it back home to us. And we can do something about that. Let's do something about that.
I recognize a member from Dakota, Representative Roach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's not going to come as any shock, but I rise in opposition of this. You know, it's really, really sad that we're getting to this point where it's just complete political theater. It's disgraceful. Using the tragedies of the Annunciation shooting to push a narrative and to try to strip away law-abiding citizens the right to carry a firearm, the right to own an AR-15. These are God-given rights bestowed to us by our Creator, not man, not government. You know, many members on the other side of the aisle said, join the movement. There's 12 other states that have done this. Well, there's 29 states in the country, even more, that have a constitutional right to carry. So I urge you, you're right, let's join the movement. Let's be one of the states that actually recognizes our God-given right to have a constitutional right to carry a firearm and not ask daddy government if they can have permission. You're making, in this proposal, in this bill, you're making Minnesotans a felon for having some of these firearms. 5 years in prison, $25,000 fine. As some members have said, for having a tool? It's absurd. Political theater to rally the base, to give false hope. You know that this would not stop tragedies from happening. You all know that. There is nothing stopping someone from acting on hate in their heart. They will find a means by any way, shape, or form. This takes away the rights from law-abiding citizens. As many members on this side of the aisle have stated, they have the right to defend their family and are going to use every opportunity and force that they have to do that. You know, we could be talking about real things, real issues that are actually affecting Minnesotans. $18 billion of wasteful spending, gone. $1 billion for a palace for politicians. $9 billion in fraud. 14 different HHS programs that are being abused. Putting money back into the hands of Minnesotans that are struggling, lowering property taxes, getting rid of unfunded mandates on our counties and our municipalities. But instead, we're going to sit here and play political theater, giving empty promises to families that are actually hurting, as if this would, passing this law would change anything. It doesn't change the tragedy. It doesn't bring those kids back. Matter of fact, it emboldens and empowers criminals to do it again. And to do it more often. Because they know that there's not law-abiding citizens to stand in their way. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Period. You know, I wish many of you would take this serious, but instead, we're not taking it serious. It's ridiculous. We have more people that are here looking to be failed actors than actual politicians. We come up here 4 days a week and we go home. We sell false hope. Like, let's do the job. It's ridiculous.
I recognize a member from Ramsey, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, as I've been listening carefully to the debate, I feel like there's one thing that we are all very much agreeing on, that not only the situation of enunciation, but I think I was hearing in my colleagues' discussions that this is an unacceptable, tragic, horrible situation, right, that our state and our country find ourselves in. The shooting enunciation, that was awful, unthinkable, and that what we experience as a state and country in having guns be the leading cause of death for children and teens, I believe you would agree, is also unacceptable and awful. And I heard some phrases that especially reinforce that for me. At one point, one of my colleagues said there shouldn't be a price tag for keeping our kids safe. There should not be any price we put on that. Keeping our kids safe is the #1 thing to do. During a hearing the last couple weeks, another GOP colleague said at one point, if there was any chance that this could help, any chance, I would pass it. I would vote in favor of it. And at the time, I'll admit I found that pretty aggravating, what he was saying, because I didn't understand how he could think that it wouldn't help. We'll talk about that. But the thing right now that I want to focus on is that sense that this is such a horrible situation, we've got to do whatever we can, any chance that things could help. Members, a reminder that our country experiences fatalities and injuries from guns at a rate that is higher by far than any other country we want to compare ourselves to. And I would assume that for many of us who are thinking about our country, we're not thinking of our country as being the worst at something, much less the thing that you'd want to not at all be last in, which is how well you're keeping your kids safe from guns. So, tragic situation that is unacceptable. I think we can all agree on that. That then leads, though, to the other point, which is that there's nothing much to be done about it, is what I hear, except for, and I did hear a few things. We talk about mental health. Other countries have mental health issues. If you have something you think that most of the other countries are doing, they've got some policy or not, I'd love to hear that. Other countries have mental health challenges. They don't have the same rate that we do, rate of gun death fatality. Social media, it crosses country borders, national borders. They have social media as well. Those other countries do. And security funding for schools, as several of my colleagues have pointed out, members, we experience that rate of fatality and injury at all sorts of settings. How many armed guards are you envisioning at our schools, but also at our churches, but also at our nightclubs, our malls, our concerts, our movie theaters, our places of business? Like, how does that work? The difference with other countries is our relationship with guns. And maybe what we say is, maybe some of my colleagues are saying that's just what our country does. Those are the policies that we have. I would note, though, get back to the first point. What is the price that you pay for keeping our children safe? Do you, in fact, think that our country should not be last in this, that we should be able to match other countries in how will we keep our kids and our teens safe? A reminder, members, we have made policy choices about what guns to allow and what guns not to allow. At one point, I think Representative Fogelman said, our laws say that you have the same weaponry as the military has. I have not seen, Representative Fogelman, I'm not sure if you're going to propose this or others, to allow civilian possession of fully automatic weapons, of tanks, of howitzers. We have made a choice that we will have some guns and some permitted, some not. There are states that ban more than we do. There are states that don't. A reminder that in this case, we're talking about weapons that make shootings much more lethal. More rounds, more quickly, at a higher speed, resulting in more damage. Remember, these are defined currently in law. Right now, semi-automatic military-style assault weapons. A couple points, my colleagues use those terms like it's kind of a made-up term. That's in the law. It was passed quite a while back. That's in our current law. So my colleagues are saying there's nothing to be done. This is unconstitutional. Representative Nash and others, if you look at District of Columbia v. Heller, by the way, that was decided on June 26, 2008, as long as we're citing dates there. If you look at the famous footnote by Justice Scalia, dangerous and unusual weapons can be regulated. And in fact, the court's rulings have confirmed that because there are multiple assault weapons bans right now in states, and there was a federal ban for 10 years, and that still is around, not unconstitutional. What we end up doing with gun bills is applying objections that we just wouldn't apply to other proposals. Criminals won't follow laws. Many of you are proposing new crimes regularly. Like, you do seem to believe that criminal laws have some value. Why not in this case? This wouldn't stop a madman. Members, as we've identified, this greatly increases the damage and the harm and the rate of death and the number of people who can be killed quickly. Saying that this won't solve every problem. Members, repeatedly in committees, we hear from you, this is one small step forward. And we all say that sort of thing, right? This is not going to solve every problem. This is going to advance things. Why do we apply a different standard to these kinds of proposals? Members, changes in law do matter. The red flag law that I was the original author of, then former Representative Ruth Richardson, Chair Moeller, Chair Frazier, that has made a difference. When that law was being passed 2 years ago, many of our colleagues said, oh, this won't do anything, it's going to be a problem, it's going to be abused. It's been enormously successful around the state and has prevented harm, as we've seen in many cases. And the federal ban was, in fact, effective. I want to note, though, the final obstacle that we keep hearing is your own unwillingness to take action. Well, this is a tied house, so yeah, that's all we can do, I guess. Representative Nadeau, you said, other proposals are moving forward. This proposal can move forward. We just need one person to vote for it on the other side. That's the way it will move forward. Your own unwillingness is not an obstacle to do, is not something you can cite as a reason not to do this. Ultimately, this ends up being a lot of obfuscation and we're bringing up a lot of things. Minnesotans' voices are cutting through the clutter. They are calling out to us. They are saying you're talking about using tragedy to change laws. That's what Minnesotans are calling us to do. It's not those of us in the room making promises to Minnesotans, empty or otherwise. It's them making a demand to us. The Annunciation parents telling us to change the law, they're telling us that. That's not us saying anything back to them. They're saying, do this. And the people that are their friends and their families and those around the state supporting them. Members, we have a solemn power, each person in this room. We have an election certificate. Nobody outside this room has a certificate in the House, right? Nobody else does. Every person in this room does. And we have to listen to the people talking to us and open our eyes and act. It's time to cut through the obfuscation. It's time to say, well, this is a horrible thing. This is a horrible tragedy, but boy, there's nothing to be done. United States, Minnesota, I guess we just can't do anything about it. We're going to harden a few schools, so as Representative Johnson said, against the guns that are out there. We're not going to do anything about anything else, but ultimately, we're just kind of stuck. All those other countries must have solved something that we haven't been able to figure out, and we're just stuck. Open your eyes, look into your hearts. Minnesotans are going to keep on calling to us. They're calling to us now to vote green on this motion, and they're calling us to keep going, and they are going to keep doing that until we pass this bill, until we make meaningful action on gun violence. Members, please vote green. Take the next step on this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member from Beltrami, Representative Bliss.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We heard this bill in public safety. It was a bad bill, and we killed it, we thought. It was cloned and reintroduced and brought into judiciary. It was still a bad bill, and we killed it. Members, this is still a bad bill. Let's kill it for the third time and put a fork in it.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Finke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of political theater. I'm giving our job a really bad name here tonight. But I love the theater, and I love stories and storytelling, and I think it's how we reach people in the world. So I don't have a problem with theater. I think we need to recognize that that's kind of what we do, and I'm okay with that. I also rise in support of the motion, though. And I don't necessarily want to rehash the arguments that we have made. I think rather I would like to talk about the world and kind of how we see the world, what I'm hearing from tonight's debate, and how I understand it based on our experiences in the world. And I have to say that the vision of the world that I have been hearing tonight from our colleagues across the aisle is shockingly, to me, nihilistic. It is shockingly violent. I offer the last member's speech as an example, but I think we have to recognize that there is a hopelessness. There is a deep, deep hopelessness in the idea that there can be no stopping a madman intent upon mass murder. I simply refuse to believe that that is true. I refuse to believe no one can do anything to stop these murders. I think it's important for us to recognize that we can all be affected by this gun violence in different ways. One of the most important affecting days of my life was the Pulse nightclub shooting. That didn't happen here. 2016, it happened in Orlando, an AR-15, a couple of minutes. 50 people died that day, 58 more wounded by the shooter. Andrea Gibson described that as a massacre of people who died, a massacre of people who did not leave the dance floor when they heard gunshots because they thought they were the beats of a song, right? 50 people at a queer nightclub dancing, murdered instantly. That day legitimately changed the trajectory of my life. I'm so grateful for who I became as a result of the ways that my life changed there, but that horrific tragedy, I refuse to believe nothing could have stopped that. Nothing we can imagine ever would have stopped that. I think it's essential that we allow ourselves, I believe, to be open to the impact of the violence that happens in the world. And Annunciation happened in our communities, and we have spent a lot of time talking about Annunciation, and there is many, many ways people here have been affected by Annunciation, and we can go back all the way to my high school days with Columbine. You can go forward, you can find the landmarks in your life, probably, if you are open to the concept of how the world acts affecting you personally. Whether it's Newtown or Uvalde, Parkland, the Buffalo, New York supermarket, Aurora movie theater, the music festival in Las Vegas, the most deadly mass shooting, all those shootings with an AR-15. These things have to continue to affect us, but we have to be able to see them not as a harbinger of a violent, apocalyptic future, but as a call for us to find a better world. I come here to build a better world for everyone. That is what I do. It is how I understand my job. I do not come here with the idea that if I don't have enough bullets to protect my family, somebody is going to come to my home and murder everyone. Maybe that will happen. Maybe that will happen. But that is not the vision of the world I am trying to manifest for myself or for anyone. So I'm going to take a little turn here. We're going to talk about the Catholic author Evelyn Waugh, who's one of my favorites. Evelyn Waugh was a Catholic writer from the 30s and 40s. If you don't, he was a man, yes, Sydney, a man. But he's famous for writing, cutting satires of the Roaring '20s. But he wrote this deeply earnest trilogy called the Sword of Honor trilogy. And it's a war trilogy about Guy Crouchback, and it starts when he's young and he joins the army, and it ends when he's old and he leaves the army. And he does all of this work, all of his life. He is in the military. He is doing what he believes is good. He's understanding life through conflict and through violence and through what he could have done and how bad it could have gotten and how it's going to continue to get worse. And he gets out of the army, and he's trying to recognize there was this attack on an island, and he was trying to pull people to safety and get them into boats as they were fleeing. And he could have saved more people. He could have saved more people, and he becomes consumed by this idea, right? He's just steeped in this worldview. And he's talking to his father. His father is a priest. And his father says to him, just like a simple mass language, he says, Guy, his name is Guy, quantitative judgments do not apply. Right? And they're talking about your spirituality, your morality, your understanding of the individual, what it means to do good in the world. It's one of the deepest, most profound, life-changing things I've ever internalized. Quantitative judgments do not apply. And when I am sitting here all night long, listening to this violent, nihilistic, apocalyptic rhetoric about the unstoppability of violence, about how no one can stop a madman except for a person apparently now with another assault weapon. This just continue. It's not just the gun violence. Go back to the other conversation we had, a dark, despairing, apocalyptic vision of the world. And the lesson that Eva Lenoir taught me in that novel is that we don't have to live our lives trying to understand how we're going to save everyone. How are you going to change everything for everyone forever? Quantitative judgments do not apply. What if we pass this bill and we only saved 10 people? Well, if you've ever experienced loss at the hands of a gun, and I have, and people have, that's 10 lives that are forever changed. The hope of a world where we saved 10 people's lives. How can we do something else? You don't have to stop every madman. You don't have to stop every shooting that will ever happen forever. We can help people, even a few people, meaningfully not have their lives torn apart. I think about Pulse. That's the one I go to. 50 people died there. 50 dancing queer people who were having the time of their lives at a place where they did not have to worry about who they were. They could celebrate among people who loved them, and they died there for it. Or you can think about the 2 people. Quantitative judgments don't apply, y'all. 2 people who lost their life, 2 children. If we could have done anything in this room, anyone could have done something to save those 2 children's lives, you don't think we should make a law only to have saved those 2 children's lives? We don't have to stop every madman. We do not have to stop everything forever. Let a little sunlight into your world. Let people have a grasp for hope that the world can be different than it is. I've heard multiple calls to the good book, and the good book is clear, y'all. We do it because of love, loving each other, loving our neighbors, not because we can save everything, but because that act of love is the point. There has to be hope and sunlight in the world. And the world that we are painting here tonight is the darkest vision of a future I think I've ever heard. So if it's just political theater that we're doing here, then to the voters in Minnesota, what kind of world are you hoping to build? Are you hoping to build one where bad people with high-capacity magazines and assault weapons are stopped in the streets by good people with high-capacity magazines and assault weapons? Or are you trying to build a future where perhaps there is peace? Peace. We won't stop all crime, but the hope that you can be in the world with peace and love is worth fighting for. Quantitative judgments do not apply. Do everything just to save 2 more children's lives, and we will have earned our right to be in this room.
I recognize a member from St. Louis, Representative Warwas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members. I know there's probably a collective groan going up. Some of my folks want to go home, and thank you for that. You know, we've talked a lot about guns tonight, and you know, the people in my district. There's a lot of guns where I live. There's a lot of guns in Minnesota. The people in my district have been emailing me, talking about these bills, talking about this bill, and how important it is to them that we stand against these gun bills because they want to see their Second Amendment rights protected. And I've been able to tell them definitively that as long as we have this tie, that their rights are safe. Their rights are safe with us. Otherwise, all bets are off. And I understand the good intentions of certain kinds of bans. I do. But I want to talk about something else, because the reason we're talking about guns today and we're talking about these bans today, members, is because of the Annunciation School shooting. And I think we should be asking ourselves not just about the guns and what people do with guns, but we should be asking why these shootings have become more prevalent in our society. I believe that our youth are craving attention. Oftentimes these shooters are part of the youth population. There's endless media, there's phones, there's distractions. Kids feel unseen. In this busy job that I've got, the 2 jobs that I've got, I think my kids often feel unseen. And I need to remember to pay attention to them. So they do things to get attention. There's a lot of broken families out there. The bottom line is, people get desperate when they crave attention. They do extreme things, and that's too bad. At Annunciation, and I don't think anybody addressed this tonight, I apologize if they did, the 23-year-old shooter was called Robin, but was a biological male, given name of Robert. Reports indicated the shooter said he was, and these are his quotes from his manifesto, it's not me.
Madam Speaker, point of personal privilege or point of order?
State your point of order.
I'm not even sure what point to say. Could we please not read out of the shooter's journal for the sake of the families that may be watching?
As a reminder, members, we are on the motion to recall and place on the general register, House File 3433, Representative Warwas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This individual said they were tired of being trans and wished they had never brainwashed themselves.
Madam Speaker.
He essentially lost the will to live.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
State your point of order.
Under House Rule 2.31, offensive words in debate, the manifesto of a mass murderer is not something that's appropriate to be read on the House floor.
Members, we are on the order to recall and place on the general register, House File 3433, Representative Warwas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we have ceased to value individuals as they are, and eventually the choices they make next, I think, are designed to get our attention. My dad used to say, when all guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Now, we're talking about magazine bans and things like that, but there's millions of those magazines out there. There's millions more guns. These crimes take an individual, and it's been mentioned many times, a crazed individual, to commit these crimes. What is going to stop a crazed individual? Who do we call when these crazed individuals are doing things and hurting people, killing children? We call good guys with guns. Good guys with guns stop bad guys with guns. And as long as I have a say in this discussion, our Second Amendment rights shall not be infringed. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Sherburne, Representative Novotny.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Maybe it's the fact that I'm getting towards the end and I'm getting in the short timer phase, but some of the things just kind of bug me. And some of the things that kind of bug me is the fact that we will quote statistics. Not we. I wouldn't do this, but the other side of the aisle likes to quote statistics or polls, and they will say, this poll said this much. And there's been a lot of numbers thrown around about how overwhelming it is. It's up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever you say. Are you against a military-style assault rifle? Never mind the fact that like 85% want the Save America Act, but we can't pass that because we don't want voter ID. But I suspect if you called someone and you said, should we have a restriction on military-style assault rifles? Well, if you ask me, my version of a military-style assault rifle is a lot different than what you probably ask someone in the metro area that has no idea about firearms or any experience working with them. To me, a military-style assault rifle is not what most of this bill covers. And since this has all been covered multiple times in committees and the members on the other side of the aisle don't understand this, I will address this to the people at home. For the people at home, I'd like to point out to you that their description of a military-style assault rifle includes line 3.1 or 3.9, a rimfire rifle with the fixed magazine, a semi-automatic shotgun that has one or more of the following items: a pistol grip or a thumbhole stock. So if you're disabled and you need help holding a weapon, that's a military-style assault weapon. If you want to go duck hunting and you want to use the thumbhole stock and your 12 gauge, by this bill, that'd be a military-style assault rifle. I'm pretty sure that wasn't explained to the people when you called them to do your survey. I'm pretty sure that a telescoping stock on a semi-automatic shotgun was not explained to them. So if you have a female shooter, I used to help with the trap league. Trap shooting's the fastest growing high school sport in Minnesota. So if you got a female with a smaller statue and she gets one with an adjustable stock so she can get a proper grip and proper cheek set, that would be a semi-automatic weapon, a military-style assault weapon by this bill. I bet you that didn't get explained to them when you did that. I'd also like to point out the fact that you probably didn't explain to them that if they want to keep a weapon and they get grandfathered in, they probably didn't explain to you when they did this survey that if you want to comply with this law, you have to do all this registration. And they probably didn't explain to you that you would have to agree to have your house inspected. They probably didn't explain to you that under this bill, 3433, and you can look it up yourself, line 5.14, if you have one of these weapons that is grandfathered in, possessing the device is only allowed on property owned or immediately controlled by the person while engaged in illegal use of the device at a duly licensed firing range or while transporting the item in compliance with applicable law. So the only place you can use that grandfathered weapon in that you get permission from the government to do is if you are on your own property or you're at a firing range. So when they did that survey that is cited so many times over here, they probably didn't ask you if your semi-automatic 308, which is a very common deer rifle used in this state, They probably didn't explain to you that you couldn't use that rifle on any property that's not yours. You couldn't go to a state forest, you couldn't go to a national forest. They didn't explain that. I'm pretty sure. That's just a guess on my part. So that's a frustration with me. That's frustration after being here almost 7 sessions, as it comes to the end. The fact that the people that may represent you will keep saying something that's not true. This isn't an AR ban. This is an almost everything ban, including a rimfire rifle, which is the smallest small game rifle that's out there. This is a bad bill, as Representative Nash pointed out early on, hours ago. If it's not, at least it felt like it. Okay? This will be struck down. Vote no.
I recognize the member from Fillmore, Representative Davids.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to make a motion that we're allowed to meet past midnight.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion fails. I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I have 3 hours and 35 minutes to speak. Is that correct, Representative Davis? All right. Thank you, members. I have a question for folks here. How many of you did drills when you were a student for fire, right? How many of you did fire drills when you were kids? None of you did fire drills? Okay. Just a few? Fire drills, yeah, when you were a kid. Okay. How many of you did active shooter drills when you were a kid? One? All right. I didn't. I guess you're the youngest in the chamber. This was not the normal thing decades ago. This is a new reality, and it does not have to be our reality. When my kids were in preschool, they came home as 3-year-olds and said, "Hey, Dad, today in preschool, we did the hide from the bad guys drill." This has been so normalized in our communities that our children are bearing the brunt of doing drills every single year to enact what it would be like if an active shooter was in their schools. This is not what other countries do. This is not what we used to do in the United States. We should all want to live in a world where we don't have to teach kids how to shelter in place and turn off the lights, right? When I was in law school, the very first job I had was working for Senator Dianne Feinstein, and the very first bill she asked me to work on was an assault weapons ban. And she came in to politics running for higher office because of an act of political violence. There was a shooting of San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk that she had to respond to. And the assault weapons ban that she passed was in effect from 1994 to 2004, and it worked. There is evidence. I know some folks didn't like that we cite evidence, but guess what? When we're passing laws, it's helpful to look at data. And assault weapons ban reduced the number of school shooting victims by 54% during that decade. If the federal law had been reauthorized after 2005, researchers estimate it would have prevented 30 mass shootings and protected 1,478 people from being shot and killed or wounded. We endured our own political violence last year. And I don't know how many folks remember this, but Melissa and Mark Hortman's killer had an assault weapon on the front seat of his vehicle. And the thought was that he might end his rampage here at the No Kings rally that was happening that morning, and that the impact could have been far more lives lost. Banning assault weapons is not controversial with the public. And I'll read the question that was asked for the poll that we've been citing. The question was, should we ban the sale of assault-style weapons like the AR-15? That is pretty darn clear. 79% support in the suburbs. That's higher than my community of Minneapolis, 71% support. And why? Because it is common sense to Minnesotans that guns that shoot more bullets at a higher speed and a higher rate of velocity kill more people. Assault weapons are responsible for 85% of mass shooting deaths. Uvalde, Texas, 19 kids, 2 teachers killed by an assault weapon. Newtown, Connecticut, 26 people, including 20 kids killed by an assault weapon. Orlando, Florida, as Representative Finke talked about, 49 killed, 58 wounded. Aurora, Colorado, 12 killed, 58 injured by an assault weapon. Parkland, Florida, 17 students and teachers killed by an assault weapon. We know this bill will save lives. It's not that hard to understand that weapons designed to kill people with more bullets going faster will kill more people. And for all of us, kids' lives should come first. So let me remind you again, it's deadline week. Tomorrow is the deadline. This vote is significant. For those of you who may have voted no on magazines, banning assault weapons is even more common sense for Minnesotans and is supported by even more Minnesotans. Today's vote could show Minnesotans that the tide is turning. It could give them hope that gun violence is finally being taken seriously, that we're listening to the victims, to the families who have been calling on us out here at the state. The state is watching, our constituents are watching. Please do know what you know is right. Please do what your constituents believe is right. Please vote yes.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, the maker of the motion, Representative Greenman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think we're all tired. It's a hard, heavy conversation. And we've been talking a lot about what we do. And I'll say my constituents don't say, just do something. They are saying, get these tools of carnage out of our communities. They're being pretty specific. And, you know, as I sit here, I hear across the aisle my colleagues talk about anything. But the only thing that nearly all of these nearly all of these mass shootings had in common was the AR-15. The gun. Anything but talk about the actual tools, the guns, that shoot more rapidly at higher velocity because that's what they were designed to do. That's not theater, that's just facts. And, you know, I heard, there's a lot I heard, and actually Representative Pinto, Representative Finke, Representative Frazier, folks really did a lot of the work of cleanup. But I just want to be clear. First of all, there have been assault weapons bans that have been challenged in 5 appellate courts, and have not been, and the Supreme Court has not struck down any of them. None of those courts have struck down any of them. So far, it's 5 for 5. In terms of being upheld. And I know Nash has a case about a stun gun in Massachusetts, but we're actually talking about the technology and the assault weapons ban. We had an assault weapons ban in the United States for 10 years. And the evidence shows 70% less mass casualty events. Minnesotans are expecting us to be brave and not look away from these guns. Weapons made for war do not belong in our schools, but they also don't belong in our grocery stores, our nightclubs, our parks, or anywhere in our communities. This is about what Minnesotans are asking us. And when you call their stories political theater, or our efforts to respond to those stories, those calls, those pleas, those prayers, those demands, that we look at these weapons, it's not just an insult to us, it is an insult to what they are trying to do, which is actually make change. These families hear that. Our constituents hear that. And not just our constituents on this side of the aisle. And most importantly, our kids hear that. They hear that these weapons, that keeping any and every weapon, any and every consumer good is more important than their lives and their safety and keeping them safe. In Public Safety Committee, Jackie Flavin beseeched us. She said, Minnesotans can be brave. But the thing is, Minnesotans are being brave. The question is, will we listen? And I hear a lot of me and I, and even us and you under the dome, but it's not about us in this room. It is about everybody out here who we are accountable to. It is about the Minnesotans. And yes, statistics and facts do still matter. But the 2/3 of Minnesotans who are asking us to do this, to ban military-style assault weapons, they're asking us to be brave. And so I guess I want to end with, I think, something that Representative Finke reminded us, which is this is a question about how the world we want to leave to our children. Sophia asked us to do something to make it right. We need to do something to make it right for our kids. And when I look around this Capitol, and when I have been in this Capitol this year, I have seen Harper's light everywhere and Fletcher's energy as a driving force. I have seen families come and say, we are holding you in hope, because they believe that fierce love, that hope, is more powerful than this vision of violence and fear. So the question for me is, we have this vote, and we have 8 weeks left of session, and we have our lifetimes to do this work. Tonight is just a vote, but it is a choice. It is a choice whether we will be with Minnesotans, will we be with those kids, will we will be with the future, or we will again say there's nothing we can do, these weapons of war stay in our streets. So with that, Madam Speaker, I appreciate this conversation. I think it's really important. I do think people are listening. And I just ask you to choose our kids and our future.
As a reminder, members, the House is under call. You must vote. The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will call the names of the members participating remotely.
Jones.
Jones, aye.
Jones votes aye. Rarick.
Rarick votes no.
Rarick votes no.
The clerk will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail.